Well, welcome everyone back to the Coalition for Marriage YouTube channel. What a privilege to have you joining us again. If you're doing that, if you're joining us for the first time, let me remind you again that we are the UK's largest pro-marriage organisation, representing tens of thousands of individuals and groups who support this thing, one man, one woman marriage. And as I say every time, that doesn't mean other things don't take place in society. Of course they do. You've just got to look around you. But we think that all the evidence suggests that marriage between a man and a woman brings something special to society that nothing else compares with. It brings about the best version of the next generation, all sorts of benefits, which we've gone into in plenty of other videos. I would encourage you to go and look at them. But also, it's being challenged in many ways in society these days. And it's an absolute joy and a privilege to have somebody with us today who is facing one of those challenges as we speak. Father Patrick Pulicino will discuss his story in a moment. But first, Father Patrick, would you like to say hello to our viewers and our listeners?
Good morning. Very nice to be with you.
Well, great to have you here, Father Patrick. You, as I understand it, you were a consultant urologist before you became Father Patrick in the NHS, but your experience in the Catholic Church, of course, has been in the NHS too, and that's where you've had one or two issues. But as I understand it, you were a chaplain for an NHS trust, a father there, and that in the course of that work, another Catholic asked to see you and shared with you their intention to get involved in a same-sex marriage. A homosexual man intended to, quote, marry another man. And then, that ensued in a discussion, as I understand it. You tell me just broadly how that discussion then went.
He asked if I would approve if he was married to his partner. And I said to him, what would God say about this? What do you think God would say about it? Because I wanted him to reflect from his Catholic background rather than me laying down the line or the rule. I wanted him to say, what would God say about it? And that's all I said, really. It wasn't very much, but clearly, that was my view. The other thing that he mentioned, he was very close to his mother, but he was estranged from his father because of his lifestyle. And I said in the same situation I might be too, I might be. So I wanted him to try and get closer to his parents, because particularly somebody who has a mental problem, family support is very important. That was, wasn't a very long conversation. He wanted to go out and discuss this, and I also had a witness from one of the staff. And then, we discussed a few other things, and he stopped it quite abruptly. And then following that, I heard there'd been a complaint registered. So I stopped going to that ward. And I'd only been a chaplain there for about 4 months, and they knew I was a Catholic chaplain. I hadn't made my views about marriage public before, so this was the first time.
The Catholic Church has been very clear about the Catholic Church's views on marriage, even recently publishing a side of A4 saying, well, as far as the Catholic Church is concerned, marriage has to be between a man and a woman only, because that's what the Bible says. Now, we have supporters from all faiths and none. A lot of our supporters are Christian. A lot of our supporters are Catholic. Of that exact same belief, let's say, and many don't come at it from a biblical perspective, but nevertheless think that marriage for society has to be this unique thing between a man and a woman. But either way, from your perspective, it's quite clear that's what the Catholic Church believes. Now, as I understand it, a complaint was made about you and that response, and that the then and this was a South London NHS trust, the then chief exec of the South London NHS trust removed you from your position and cited very strangely that this person's right to have their own decisions about marriage approved were more important from a equality perspective than your religious freedom to say what you believed when asked.
This was the most curious and strange and unexpected statement that came out, but she said that the trust's policy on equality and diversity takes precedence over religious belief. And she this is in a letter to him, and said that she would ensure that I understood this. And very clear statement written, and it's been publicly released. And of course, apart from anything else, it's that's against the law, because religious values are included in the Equality Act as an equal to marital, to all the other protected characteristics.
Not only that, I mean, we have laws in place. We have the Public Order Act, which says that if you're speaking publicly about sexuality or the parties to a marriage, as long as you're not intending to stir up hatred, you're allowed to say what your feelings are. They're protected by law. We have case law that says belief in marriage between a man and a woman is worthy of respect, and it absolutely is worthy of respect. So, plus there's the Equality Act. You know, we do have those legal protections, but of course things. Even more interestingly, which leads us to some interesting questions, of course, Father, is that so your position wasn't then refilled, but more Islamic imams were taken on, etc., etc. So leaving kind of this void where this Catholic teaching to help Catholics would have been. And it almost seems to be that we've got a new blasphemy, which is that you mustn't criticize homosexual relationships. Is that, or homosexual marriage, is that what we're seeing here?
Well, I think the whole way that hospital, and I think it reflects the NHS, is going, chaplains are almost seen as a burden. They're almost seen as an encumbrance to the natural functioning of the hospital. And if you see that chaplaincy, that particular hospital has a beautiful, huge chapel that has always been in use for over 100 years. Now the whole chapel has been sold off for development, and it's been going to be changed into flats. So, you know, the thing particularly about mental health, is that your faith is extremely important. Spirituality and mental health are quite close together. And first of all, because the patients very much need the support. They feel very isolated. They feel in an unusual, very strange situation, both internally, and they get thrust into a ward with a lot of patients, other patients who can have quite bizarre behaviors. So it's very, very stressful. And their religion and their faith is something that is an anchor for them. And I've seen this several times, that the only person that the patients want to speak to is the chaplain. There's a certain mistrust of people because they have been most frequently kept in the hospital against their personal wishes, and therefore there is this alienation. So for a hospital executive to say that religious beliefs are not important and undervalue them like this means not only are they going against their patients' interests, they're going against the whole chaplaincy, and it does reflect what is thought about chaplaincy nowadays. And it's very sad. And part of this is obviously the belief and the belief of people that they want reflected. And you're right that particularly that hospital, in terms of what is believed and equality, that they do not want to hear traditional Catholic beliefs on marriage. That's something they want to try and eradicate.
Interesting. And again, you know, medicine is based on an evidence base. That's how doctors work, and that's how doctors train. Yet you look at the evidence, and maybe depending on how you look at the stats, 1.5% or more are homosexual, and of those, a tiny fraction, maybe 7.8%, according to the latest ONS figures, are in same-sex marriages, so-called marriages. So we're looking at tiny, tiny, tiny numbers. Now, I can tell you that there will be many, many, many times that many Catholics who are aggrieved at such a thing in the country, but their feelings don't seem to matter compared to other feelings. And it's not about rights, because we had things called civil partnerships where partners could have exactly the same rights as those who are married in the church, but it was no, we want that word marriage, which is the thing that aggrieves so many people, because then there is no distinction between what other people do and that thing which one man and one woman does, which by all the evidence, let alone scripture, seems to be the thing which brings about the best version of the next generation and should really be promoted and esteemed much higher than it seems to be in society and in NHS trusts.
Yes, definitely. Well, marriage is very sacred, and it is there in the scriptures, and it is there in the New Testament. And effectively, the marriage bond is actually between man and woman, is a reflection of the bond that exists within the Holy Trinity, between the sacred forces that there are. And it's not just something that is dreamt up to keep people happy. It's a very sacred thing. And marriage, as you know, it is the powerhouse of society. If marriage is, and this is Christian and marriage between man and woman, if that is not maintained in society, society will very quickly deteriorate. And as we're seeing in a lot of places.
Well, the evidence is quite clear. You're absolutely right. And there is a correlation. All sorts of things, the number of children born outside of marriage, the number of crimes reported in the UK, those two curves are very, very similar when you look at them. The instance of people in prison that come from fatherless homes, etc. The evidence is really abundant in terms of the benefits. Growing up with your biological married mum and dad, it just seems to be the thing that produces the best version of the next generation, and it's something which should be promoted.
Definitely. Well, it's part of us as humans. It's part of our makeup. It's something we can't get rid of without causing horrific damage.
The church's teaching is very clear on homosexuality and other things, but even outside of that, in the context of a liberal democracy, which is not theistic, it's broader than that. The society we live in, adults are free to do what they want. That's a completely separate conversation, and for the legislature and the government at the time to discuss, etc. But the idea of marriage, well, that's something else. And like you say, it's sacred in the church. It seems to be, from the evidence base, something which should be kept pretty sacred, objectively, not just from a scriptural point of view, because it really does seem to be a good thing, and we should be promoted and protected. I'm curious, Father, how has this made you feel? Because this is quite an ordeal you've had to go through here.
You look around you and you see these things happening, but when it reaches a point where the chief executive feels that the situation has changed so much that they can write in a public binding document that these values take precedence, it is of great concern. It's of concern that, particularly within the NHS, I would say, they've become a law unto themselves, and that is a big worry. I think it's a big problem, and now they don't have a chaplain who can look after the needs of the Catholic patients there. So it's like they can't have confessions, communions, because of this. So it's you build on one thing. It may be just the marriage difference you're looking at, but the whole of the Christian life is thrown out the door. And in terms of society has been going this way a long time. And as cohabitation and is part of the problem too.
And Carl Trueman's quite clear, about marriage being at the heart of the culture war that we're facing. All sorts of implications. You've got many reports of people being asked when they arrive in hospital, men being asked, are you a man or a woman? are you pregnant? And you think, I'm quite clearly a man. The sort of confusion which it sows, the idea that somebody can identify, men and women are physiologically different, and that matters for medical treatments. And it doesn't make an awful lot of sense, all the confusion that's going on. But listen, I know you're busy. I know you're being supported by the wonderful Christian Legal Centre in terms of taking this case forward. And you are. I think what I want people to realise is that you've got this gentle, kind-hearted man such as yourself, who's been very awfully treated, but you've said no, that's not good enough. First of all, I think you're good. Thank you for doing that, because the thing that really matters here, for every brave soul like you who's doing this, there are 100 people who are silenced. And the chilling effect that they hear of these sorts of things shuts people up from speaking in the first place. So I'm thankful that you're doing that. I want to thank you for your stand.
Yes. No, thank you. It is important. And I don't really think I'm doing very much, but I think these things are handed to you. I mean, the situation was put in front of me. It was an unusual situation with this man, but I think when a situation's handed to you, it's like, God is telling you, do something about it, and you've got to do a little bit.
Well, we'll follow this, and perhaps you'll come back and talk to us again, Father.
Yes, sure.
Well, listen, it's such a privilege to talk to you. Thank you very much for your stand. Thank you for all you're doing, and every blessing going forward.
Thank you very much.